Hey everyone, I'm TH Pine and welcome to Screeps. What is Screeps, you ask? I like to call it a competitive mass multiplayer online AI programming game, or short, Skynet simulator. It's available in Steam Early Access or in your browser on Screeps.com, and this is what it looks like. Before we start this video though, a warning. The game requires you to actually write code, JavaScript to be more precise, and it will not teach you how to do so. It has a pretty decent tutorial on how to use the game's API, and it doesn't take like a huge amount of experience in coding to actually write scripts for the game, but it will not teach you how to do so. So you will have to at least do some tutorials on general programming on your own before you jump into the game, or obviously are skilled in programming already. If you're not willing to do that, I guess you can continue on with a different video on a different game, because this one is clearly aimed at developers. So before we actually start, a disclaimer, the game runs like shit while recording. When I turn off the recording software, it runs butterly smooth, so it should not be a big issue because the game is fairly slow paced. So if you see some performance drops, it should not harm the video too much, but keep in mind it's connected to the recording software and not the game's fault. So let's finally start talking about the game. What is it? As I said, it's an AI programming game. Well, what do I mean with that? It's a strategy game where you don't control your units directly, and instead you write code, scripts, to control them. And, well, how does it work? Well, this is my colony. A colony consists of multiple creeps, not scrapes. They're called creeps, the game is called Screeps. Which are those little thingies over here, and they can do a bunch of stuff. The simple things are collect energy from energy sources, which are those yellow dots over here. This one is pretty empty. This is even more empty, but it should regenerate in a moment, and then you see big yellow dots glowing there, which, well, are energy sources. So you can harvest those, and you can bring the energy back to your spawner, which will allow you to spawn new creeps or more creeps. And you could also bring the energy to your controller, to your room controller, to upgrade it, which will allow you to build more advanced buildings and stuff like that. And as I said, you cannot control the units directly. You have to write code. Let's take a look at the code really quickly, and then I will explain a few more game details. So we pop up the editor here. Oh, it's open already. There we go. And this is code I wrote or copy-pasted from tutorial partially to actually run my colony. So yeah, let's talk about game mechanics a little more before we dive a little bit into the coding side, shall we? Okay, as I said, you have creeps. You start with one room, and in this room you will have a spawner, which you can position yourself, and you will have a controller. Whoever controls the controller of a room controls the room. Makes sense, right? The controller starts at level 1, which will only allow you to build very, very limited amounts of building and types of buildings as well. And you can upgrade it by getting energy over to the controller. And well, this will upgrade the controller and allows you to build more buildings or more advanced buildings, which will then allow you to advance your colony more. For example, it will allow you to build more extensions. Extensions are buildings where you can store energy in. There are also containers, which are just for storing energy. Extensions are a little special because you can store energy in there, and you can then use energy to spawn creeps from your spawner. So the more you can build different kind of creeps. If you take a look at one, this will make more sense in a moment. It has a body consisting of 28 parts, and those parts are different modules. You can completely, like, a creep can have up to 50 parts, and they're a whole of different kinds of parts. I think 8 or 9 different kinds of parts. I used work parts, carry parts, and move parts so far for my creeps. And the more you put in there, the more efficient the creep will be. So the more work parts are in there, the quicker it will harvest resources, for example. The more carry parts, the more resources it can actually carry. The more move parts, the quicker it is. Well, basically, the more parts you have, the more move parts you need to move at a decent speed. Let's put it that way, because there is still a maximum of one square per tick, and ticks is the game runs in ticks, and I think one tick on the main server at least is like 2 seconds, and every tick your code will be well, run, and your creeps will do whatever your code told them to do. So that's the idea here. And as I said, you can build your creeps from multiple body parts, and the more body parts you use, the more energy you need to spawn the creep. And you can only store up to 300 energy in the spawner, so at the beginning you're fairly limited on the kinds of creeps you can build. And the more extensions you build, though, the bigger creeps you can spawn. Because, as I said, you can use the energy stored in extensions to spawn creeps. So, and yeah, the higher your controller level is, mine is at 5 right now, the more extensions you can build. And that allows for bigger creeps. And on higher control levels, it will actually increase the capacity of extensions, which will allow for even bigger creeps, up to a maximum of 50 body parts, as mentioned before. So that's the main core thing you have to do at the beginning of the game. And I'm still fairly at the beginning, even though I played for 9 days or something, because the game is an online mass multiplayer online game, so there are other players in the same world as I, and the game continues running while I'm not online, while I'm not playing the game, actually, because the game plays itself, because I wrote scripts to do so, right? To make this happen. So, yeah, I played the game. I didn't play very efficiently. I didn't have too much time spending hours on coding good scripts and stuff. And I had to figure out how the game actually works and what good scripts are and how JavaScript works, because while I'm a professional programmer, I'm not a JavaScript expert by any means. So I had to do a bunch of learning. So my scripts were not very optimal. So you could be way more advanced at this point in the game, like after playing for 9 days. But it's still fairly slow paced, I think, even if you have optimized scripts. And right now I'm still at the beginning of the game. I'm only controlling one room so far, and yeah, have a few creeps. I had more than those, but like I had a lot of small creeps, but it's more efficient to have a few big creeps. So as soon as I got more extensions, I replaced the many small creeps with a few big creeps, and so on. What was I actually talking about? I don't know. I completely forgot. But we were talking about game mechanics. So yeah. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. Your struggles in the first few days of playing this game. So it's actually not trivial to write scripts to keep your colony alive, and that's for multiple reasons. Well, 2 main reasons actually. One reason is well, 3 reasons. 2.5. One of the main reasons is your creeps have a time to live. Every time you spawn a new creep, it will have, let's select this one, it will have a time to live counter of 1,500 ticks, which is around an hour, not quite, but close to an hour. So after that time, it will just vanish. It will be gone. And if you don't spawn new creeps, well, you will run out of creeps eventually. And that means you cannot harvest more energy, and you will, well, your colony will die, basically. Not completely. The spawner will generate a very, very small amount of energy as well. So if you completely screw up and you end up with no creeps and no energy left, you will be able to respawn one at some point. But to keep a healthy colony alive, you have to consistently, respawn creeps. Which means you have to write scripts to automate that process. Because while you could do this in the console, there's actually a way to do direct control via the console. You can give commands here. I could, for example, put down here console.log and write something. We can send this, and it will actually do so, hopefully. There we go. Or you can access game elements like game.spawns, which are all the spawns I control, and then the name of my spawn, which is spawn 1, and I could do create creep, for example. And I could give it some arguments and send this command, and it would try to build this creep, for example. Let's actually do one. It will not work because we don't have the energy required to do so, but a very simple creep would be work, carry, move. So one body part of work, carry, and move, and a name, test, creep. Yeah, as you can see, the performance is terrible. This is because of the recording, as mentioned earlier. And this would try to spawn a creep. It will not actually do so. Yeah, it doesn't. It gives an error code because it's spawning already. So the spawner is working right now. So the command did not go through. Obviously, you can't do that if your creeps die every hour, or except if you don't sleep at all or something like that. So that's not a good idea. So you have to write scripts to automate that process. The other thing you have to automate so your colony doesn't die is to upgrade your controller, because when you start not putting energy in your controller, or if you stop putting any energy in your controller, there is a timer which will go down. It's fairly high. I think it's 60,000 ticks or something along those lines. But when this timer reaches 0, your controller will drop 1 level. And as soon as it drops to 0, you will lose control of the room. So yeah, that's the thing you want to prevent. So keeping your creeps alive and keeping your controller upgraded are things you definitely have to automate. There's no way around that. And actually, writing scripts which do that automatically is not trivial. It's not super hard, not super complicated, especially if you're familiar with writing JavaScript code. But yeah, it took me a few attempts until I succeeded at not killing my colony every few hours. So it's definitely not trivial. I mentioned 2.5 reasons why it's not trivial. The other one is that basically the decay thing is true for almost everything in the game. So you see those roads here. I did build those, and those will decay as well. Roads allow your creeps to move faster or, get slowed down less by the environment, I guess. And those will decay as well over time and every time a creep moves over it. So yeah, you have to repair them as well and stuff like that. So most of the things decay and you have to keep them in check and you somehow have to automate that process. And that's easy, right? You could write a script that just tells creep to go around looking for structures which are not at full HP and repair them. Well, it's not that easy, because as soon as you build some walls over here, you will run into a problem, because those walls have really, really high hit points, 300 million. If you compare that to the walls with 5,000 hits, that's quite a difference. And if you just write the script really, really easily, simple, find the closest structure with less than full HP, and the closest structure ends up to be a wall, well, your creep will not do anything besides repairing that wall forever, and all your other structures will not get repaired. So it's not that trivial. Obviously, it's possible, but it's not just like a one-liner in most cases. Anyway, so what else is there in the game? This is the basics. Well, there's combat. There's combat against NPCs, which will spawn randomly after a certain amount of time at the entries of your room. And you have to fight them off. For that case, I have a tower over here, which has a script as well to shoot at enemy creeps, which will show up. The NPCs are creeps as well. So there's that. The tower has to be supplied with energy as well, so you have to write code for that as well. And there are also combat body parts for creeps, so you can build attack creeps. Or defend creeps or whatever. Like there is a melee attack and a range attack, and I think an AoE attack as well, and a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of different body parts. I didn't play around with that so far because I didn't have to. And you mostly use that to fight against other players. Where are the other players? Well, let's take a look at the world map, shall we? Well, let's click over there. You see a little part of the world map over here, but we can go to the big world map. This is my room. This is where I am right now. Unfortunately, you cannot zoom out on the world map, which is very unfortunate. But we can scroll over it. As mentioned, the performance is terrible because of the recording, so don't get confused by that. And also, it also has to load in a bunch of stuff, so it's kind of busy with that. But as you can see, there are other players in other rooms, and yeah, you can fight them. This area is green, and it's closed off with walls because this is a novice area. When you start the game, you will start in one of those, and they're kind of protected from the outside. And additionally, your room will be protected for the first few hours by walls which will lock off the entries to your room. So nobody can get into your room in the beginning and for the first few hours, and nobody can get into or out of the novice area for the first, I think, 20 something days or something along those lines. I guess the novice areas are actually like they're on a global timer. So this wall will fall. We can actually check when it will fall in 15 days. But it was there when I started playing already, so 24 days at least. I'm not sure but other players were in this novice area before me, so the novice area existed before I joined the game, so I guess it's 30 days or something along those lines in total. And that time we will be, imprisoned in this novice area. As you can see, there are a bunch of other players in here, but since my connections to other rooms are very badly, it depends on how you see it, but are very limited. I can only go to this room and in order to get to any populated room or any room with an energy source, to be more precise, I actually have to go to through at least 2 other rooms in this case, or 3 other rooms in this case, which is not a thing I bothered to do so far. What's this in here? It says a resource. It's a power source. Ooh, a power bank. I should get that at some point. Power is a different resource which will spawn randomly on the map, and it basically allows you to create power creeps, which are like hero units, and which are more stronger and stuff like that. So this is a very important resource. I'm not actually sure if I can harvest it already. I don't think I have the buildings for that to store it. You need not sure. Maybe I can just spawn it in storage, but I need the power spawn to actually use it. But maybe I can store it already, so I probably should do that. It seems like I can just store it in a storage, probably. So if I build a container or storage, I can put down, can harvest the power, and I should definitely do that because, as mentioned, oops, we can zoom here. Didn't want it to do that though, because as I mentioned, this resource is fairly valuable. Let's take a look at what it says. Power bank, power 703, decays in 1,400 ticks though. I have to be quick. Okay, so I guess I will write some code for that after this video. Let's not do that now though. Unfortunate, I didn't saw that earlier. Well, anyway, there are other resources in the game besides energy and power. You see this form, for example, this is oxygen, and you can harvest those as well. They're more for the late game though. You can harvest them and then combine them to more advanced resources, which you then can use to boost your creeps and give them special boosts and buffs, like be quicker, have a stronger attack, have more health, carry more stuff like that. And there are multiple of those on the map. I think every room has one, or most rooms have one resource. Let's take a look really quick. I think we can show them over here. Minerals, there we go. Yeah, you can see every room has a mineral, and those are different minerals, except for those border rooms. Let's switch back to owner control level. There we go, and go in here. Okay, so yeah, that's a really short overview over the game mechanics. There's way more to it. There are a lot of, like, you can check out, you have to figure out all the detailed controls, like how is movement working exactly, and stuff like that, and you have to figure out the API. As I said, there is an interactive tutorial, which is fairly good, but it's not complete by any means. It will give you, it will push you in the right direction, and then you have to, well, try stuff out on your own, or checking the API. The API is decent, like the documentation for the API is decent. It's not amazing though. It doesn't have all the detailed information at the places you want them to have to be sometimes. So sometimes it's a little hard to figure stuff out, but for the most part it's fairly well documented. And there's also a forum and a subreddit and a Steam forum, obviously, where you can just ask people and probably get a decent answer. So you can figure stuff out, but it will require some effort. Let's finally take a look at the code, shall we? There is a code editor, which I showed you earlier. There we go. Well, we can do it over here. This is obviously the not good way of doing it. We can put this thing up, and we have scripts, console, and memory. I will talk about memory in a moment. And scripts is just a script. This is the editor, but it's terrible to do editing in here. So what you want to do instead is open the external editor window by clicking this button. And this will bring up this one, which has the same tabs, so we can write scripts in here. This is still not optimal. It has pretty good auto-completion, but it doesn't have any syntax checking whatsoever. So if you're new to JavaScript, it's a pain to program in this thing. So yeah, you want to avoid that. However, those scripts are actually stored locally on your computer, at least in the Steam version, not in the web version, and which will allow you to use a third-party IDE. To, well, write your code in a proper IDE, and there are like packages you can download and stuff like that to actually be able to debug it as well, and stuff like that. And there are tools written by community members to profile your performance, because that's an important issue as well, and things like that. So there's a bunch of extra tools. This is the very basic way of doing things. I use an IDE, but I want to just show it off in the in-game tutorial here, editor tutorial. To explain how stuff goes. So you have a main script which will have a loop function, and this loop is called every tick. So whatever is in this loop will be, well, executed, hopefully, if you're not running out of CPU time, which can be a problem. But we'll talk about that later. And well, you have to put in everything here. The game is the ticks are stateless basically. So you cannot save variables from one tick to another. You have to get all information you need in this tick, or in this loop. There's no way of storing. There is a way of storing. That's where memory comes in. But you cannot just have an object which does things over a period of time, because yeah, you can have an object, but it will be obsolete next tick, or will be gone next tick, to be more precise. So that's how the core structure works. So we have to write your code in that way, that it is in a way that is executed every tick. and does stuff. So I will just give you a short overview of my script so you get an idea of what you can do. Obviously, there are tons of ways of doing scripts for this game, and this is just one simple way I came up with, and in my head I have like 20 ideas to make this better or completely replace it with other things. I just didn't came around to do it so far. So, but yeah, this is obviously just one way. It's not a very good way, but it's a simple way to get an idea. It's not that simple anymore because I did a bunch of stuff already, but when I started out, it was way simpler than this, but it's still fairly understandable, I guess. So first, I do some cleanup in the memory. I will... Well, the memory is there. It's basically you can store things in here, and it will be there in the next tick as well. So this is your way around I have only information from this tick issue. You can actively go out of your way and store stuff in memory. However, you want to clean up that memory from time to time, or you will have a bunch of useless data in there, and you don't want that. So yeah, I have some cleanup code here. Then I create tasks. I came up with this idea because I wanted to assign tasks to creeps. So for example, repair this building, or refill the tower with energy, or whatever, stuff like that. And so I have some tasks here. This is my code to find structures which are not walls, which have have less than half HP. And I will create tasks for those and assign them to assigning is later, but we'll create those tasks. And this is a function I wrote myself. I prototyped the room object in the game. So you can see over here to give it an extra method or function, which will create a task, basically, which is just a simple variable stored in memory, basically. And then we create tasks for construction sites. So if I build a new building, it will create a task for that as well, and then we will assign it to a creep to build the building. And then I have the transfer task, which is there to fill up the tower with energy. Then we assign tasks only to a few creeps, though. I gave my creeps roles, which I stored in memory again, and the creeps with the role builder will take tasks and execute them. And I just go through all the unassigned tasks in my memory and start assigning them to the creeps which are suitable for the job, basically, which is the other function in the room prototype. It's the more complex one. The create, build, repair task is actually very trivial. I could have done this just in the main code instead of making a function for it, but I was thinking like maybe later I want to make this function more complex and store more additional information to that task, so I just put it in an extra function. Dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. This is the assign creep to task function, which is a little bit more complex, but it's just picking a creep which doesn't have a task right now and assigns the task to it. And then I will move all the creeps. What I do is, you could write this completely different, but this is kind of how the tutorial told you to do so. So I stuck with it so far. Basically, you loop through all your creeps, and you check their memory for the role property which you have set when creating them, and you assign them different tasks or run different functions for the different roles. So harvester will run the role harvester script, which is over here, and we include it up here with the role harvester requires role harvester, and then we just run it for that creep, and he will do the harvesting job. And as I mentioned earlier, the builders will actually do my tasks. If there are no tasks, if they're not assigned a task, they will do the same as the upgrader, which is, taking energy to the upgrader and upgrade it. The harvesters are, by the way, harvesting energy and bringing it to the spawner and the extension so I can spawn more creeps. And repairer is basically running around repairing walls and other stuff, but mainly walls for the moment. So yeah. Then here's my tower script, which will make the tower shoot. And this is my spawn script, which which decides which creeps to spawn. And basically what I have here is I have some minimum numbers. I want to have at least 2 harvesters. I want to have at least 1 upgrader, 1 repairer, 1 builder. And if I have all of those and I'm at max energy, I'm spawning I think a builder. Yeah, I spawn another builder. So yeah, that's the idea, and this is like my fallback mechanism. I did put this in after my colony died a few times. Basically, when I'm running out of harvesters, so if my harvesters are less than 1, so 0, And then I will try to reassign another creep to become a harvester. And if that's not possible, I will spawn a new creep with the energy available. So I'm not waiting for full energy, because it's probably not going to fill up if I don't have any creeps left. So I will just spawn one with a small amount of energy, whatever I have around, and hope that this creep will be able to, well, revive my colony, basically. So let's take a really quick look at one of the roles, shall we? The harvester, because that's easy to understand. Basically, it checks his memory for source ID. Sorry, that's because I wanted to assign them to different energy sources. So some of them go to the source 0 and somewhat to 1. So this is source 0 and this is source 1. Or basically, well, then they don't have those numbers. They don't actually. Do I have an idea? I don't know. What I did is just if you find all the sources in the room, they will always be in the same order. So the IDs are just the positions in the array you get when looking for them. Then I have a variable which will switch the state between harvesting energy and bringing the energy to your spawner and your extensions. And then your creep will, while it is harvesting energy, go finding a source and taking the one which is stated by this, or determined by the source ID. And if the source energy is, if this source is empty, it will actually try to go to the other source. I implemented that recently because I ran out of energy. I only mentioned that quickly earlier. The energy sources have 3000 energy, and you can harvest all of this, and it will regenerate every 300 ticks completely. So yeah, you can run out of energy, but you just have to wait for a while. But instead of waiting, I just sent my creeps to the other source, which makes sense, right? Be more optimal. And then I will give the creep the order to harvest the source, and when the source is not in range, it will move to the source instead. And yeah, the move to command is fairly expensive when it comes to CPU time, because it's pathfinding, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. But it's pretty clever. It's actually not. It looks like this will be executed every tick as long as the source is not in range. That's not true, though. Well, the function will be executed, but it will not do a full pathfinding every time. It will automatically. It will do a pathfinding for the first time, and then it will automatically save this path in the creep's memory. And for the next 4 or 5 ticks, you can change that, but the default is, I think, 5 ticks. It will use that path, and after those 5 ticks, it will do a re-evaluation of the pathfinding. This allows for less CPU usage and still avoiding obstacles or like other creeps and stuff like that. And if I'm actually not harvesting and instead trying to feed my extensions or my spawn, I'm going in the else part here, and it will find the closest path of a structure which is either an extension or a spawn and is not at full energy, and then it will just do the same as the harvesting, just with transfer. We try to transfer energy to that target, and if we can, we move towards it. Or if it's not in range, we move towards it. So that's a simple role. The builder is a little bit more complex because it does a tasks thing, and this is the repairer and the upgrader. The upgrader is actually easiest of all of them. Should have explained that one, I guess. But anyway, that's my code. That's fairly simple code. It only works for one room, for example. So as soon as I want to expand to other rooms, I will have to rewrite a bunch of this stuff. So yeah, but this gives you an idea how you write code for this game, or how you can write code for this game. You obviously can write in like there are multiple different ideas or concepts you can use to write a proper AI for this game. But yeah, this is one way. Okay, let's talk about CPU time and then about business model, because that's actually a pretty important point for this game. So CPU time, all the commands which will actually change the game. So move a creep, put energy somewhere, spawn a creep, repair something, shoot, whatever, attack, build a building, anything. All those commands will cost a constant amount, at least a constant amount of CPU time, 0.2 CPU ticks, which is basically, one CPU tick is 1 millisecond, so 0.2 milliseconds of CPU runtime, basically. And on top of that, the whole runtime of your script, so how long the CPU needs to execute your script, which is mostly defined by how much pathfinding you're doing, is combined to one number, and this is the CPU usage for that tick. And you can see my CPU usage up here. So in this tick I used 3, and I have a maximum of 30. It's pretty low right now because my creeps are not doing much because this energy source is empty. So there's not a lot of things going on right now, but this will spike up to higher numbers from time to time. It's super low right now. Well, I don't have a lot of creeps, and there we go. It spiked to 14, and we'll go back now because I did some pathfinding, and yeah, that's expensive. So I have a limit here of 30 CPU ticks, so 30 milliseconds. What does this mean? When I exceed this limit, so my script takes longer than 30 milliseconds to execute, then it will not necessarily be stopped because there is a bucket. Well, let's explain this the other way around. Every time I don't exceed this limit, I don't reach this limit, so I only use 4 CPU ticks, for example, or 3. The rest of the CPU time I have left will be stored in a bucket, which can take up to, I think, 10,000 CPU ticks or something along those lines, until this bucket is full. If it's full, then those ticks will just go to waste. And every time I exceed the limit, I will use ticks from that bucket. And yeah, if the bucket is empty and I exceed the limit, the script will just stop executing at that point and will not complete to the end, which is obviously a thing you want to avoid. So you have to keep your CPU time in check. It's fairly easy right now because I don't have a lot of creeps, so my CPU time is pretty low. But I had times where my CPU time was peaking over 30 from time to time, and yeah. I exceeded that limit at some point, but yeah, as soon as I got bigger creeps, it just reduced the amount of creeps because it took more energy to actually create them, so it takes longer to create them, and you will end up with less creeps but stronger creeps, and this will obviously needs less pathfinding and less move to commands and less other commands, which all take CPU time, so it will reduce the amount of CPU time you will have to use, so that helps with avoiding that limit, obviously. Why is it 30? Well, basically you start with 30, and every time you increase your global control level, which I didn't explain yet, it will go up by 10 to a maximum of 300. So what's the global control level? Well, I mentioned there's also a memory cap, by the way, as you can see here, of stuff you can store in the memory. I mentioned the controller earlier. The controller takes energy to get upgraded, and your global control level, basically every time you feed energy to a controller, doesn't matter in which room, it will feed energy to your global control level as well. And the global control level is your account level, basically. Let's go here. Here we can see it. I'm still at GCL 1. It's not showing the graph. I think this is connected to the recording as well. While I'm recording, it doesn't show the numbers in here for some reason. There should be a 1 in here and I think a 0 in here, if I'm not completely mistaken. But as you can see, you can't see, but my GCL is at 1 right now, and the next level will be reached as soon as I get 1 million energy in upgraders. Fairly close to that, but it takes a while to get to level 2. You start at level 1 and it takes quite some time to get level 2. I just actually one of my critique points on the game. The global progression seems fairly slow in the beginning. Yeah, because having GCL at 1 is actually limiting you quite a bit in 2 ways. It limits your CPU, as I said earlier, which is not too big of a deal if you only have 1 room and not too many creeps, because 30 CPU should be enough for most scripts if you're not doing super crazy stuff. But it also limits the number of room controllers you can control, so how many rooms you can actually control. So I didn't spread out to another room yet, for 2 reasons. A, because I didn't want it to, and B, because I couldn't claim that room anyway, because my GCL is still at 1. So even if I would go to a different room, I could harvest the energy there and bring it back to my room, but I could not claim the controller in that room and claim the room for myself and build new buildings there. So yeah, that's how GCL works. Okay, with those meta mechanics out of the way, let's finally talk about business model, because this is actually pretty important because it's fairly complex. Well, not super complex, but surprisingly complex. So there are 2 versions of the game. There's the web version and the Steam version. Let's explain the web version first. The web version is subscription only. So if you don't buy a subscription, which is between $7 and $9 a month, depending on your model, your subscription model. If you don't have a subscription, your CPU time will be 0 and you cannot do anything. You cannot play the game, basically, because you cannot execute scripts. There are ways of getting free days. There's a Twitter promotion. You need 10 followers and have to do a tweet. This will give you 10 free days of subscription. And also, if you buy a subscription, it will give you a 3-day trial, which means you can basically cancel the subscription the first 3 days, which will completely refund the amount. So you can test the game for 3 days or for 13 days if you do the Twitter promotion on top of that as well, for free. So you can test out if it's for you. After that, you will have to buy the subscription. If you don't, your scripts will not run because you have 0 CPU time. If you have the subscription, your CPU time will be capped depending on your GCL, as I just explained. So yeah, that's how the web client works. The Steam client is a little different. The Steam client costs $15 if you buy it, and it will come with an unlimited access to the game. However, if you don't have an additional subscription, it will be capped at 10 CPU ticks, which is fairly low. You can maintain a room or maybe 2 with it if you have small but big creeps and you optimize your code well. But everything above that will become complicated pretty quickly. So 10 CPU is a really, really low number. So it basically doesn't really allow you to play the game, really. It just, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this will be fun for a long time to keep this on 10 CPU. So if you really want to play the game, you need a subscription on top of the Steam client. The Steam client comes with more, though. There comes, as I said, it comes with the client, and it comes with 1 month of subscription, and it has some additional features which are not available in the web client. Mainly that you can store your scripts locally, so you can use a third-party IDE to program your scripts. And secondly, a feature which is not implemented yet, which is custom servers. So they're working on an open source custom server you can set up yourself on some server you rented yourself or whatever, and give other people the IP to access it and play with those people without a subscription. Well, you have to pay for the server, obviously, or if you're on someone else's server, he might ask you to pay a subscription so he can pay for his server. But you don't need a subscription at that point for the main server anymore. So you will have the 10 CPU limit at the main server, and you can play on every custom server that is out there. However, as mentioned, those custom servers are not implemented yet. They are not there yet. So right now, if you buy the Steam client, your only benefit is basically the local storage. And besides that, it's a pretty bad deal, actually, because it costs $15 and you get 1 month of a subscription. You can just go to the web client, and for $15 you get 2 to 3 months of subscription. Well, 2, but anyway, you get 2 months of subscription, and yeah, you can play for 2 months, which makes sense, right? So yeah, right now I don't think the Steam client is a good deal, especially because you can just, like, if you create an account on the web client and you later buy the Steam version, you can just connect those two. And if you have the Steam client, you can always connect to the same account via the web client as well. So yeah, you can connect those accounts. So if you really want to play the game right now, I would recommend actually starting with the web client. And when they implemented the custom servers for the Steam client, you can think about buying the Steam client on top of that. Yeah, let's talk about one more mechanic, and then talk about if this is a good business model, because this mechanic is connected to the business model as well. There's another feature which is not implemented yet, which is the market. And you will have to build buildings, which you can actually build already, but I don't think they work already, which will allow you to trade resources with other players and with some auto buyers and auto sellers from NPC buildings. And you can trade resources, energy, power, and there's minerals as well. And you can trade them back and forth, and well, there will be some economy going on and stuff like that. And that's a cool idea. And on top of that, there will be a resource called game tokens or subscription tokens. Actually, the game is not, like, the store page mentions those. At one point, it calls them game tokens. At another point, it calls them subscription tokens. So I'm not sure what the correct term is, but one of those. And basically, you can buy a game token for real money, and it can be traded in for 1 month of subscription. And you can trade those tokens on the player market for in-game resources. This is basically the EVE model. This has multiple consequences. It allows you to trade a bunch of your in-game resources for a subscription time. So you can trade your in-game resources for a game token, trade that in for subscription, and you don't have to buy the subscription, but you trade it in a bunch of in-game resources. On the other side, this means you can buy for real money a game token and trade it in for in-game resources. So you get in-game resources for real money. And there's basically the two flip sides of this, because one side means, hey, it's cool. You don't if you manage to get enough resources. It's hard to say how many resources you need. Like, can you sustain on just creating the resources to trade them into game tokens? Hard to say right now because the feature is not there yet. So we have to wait for that to answer this question. But still, it's cool that you're able to get game time by just spending in-game resources or subscription time. The other side is that trading game tokens for in-game resources could be considered pay to win, because you trade real money for in-game resources, which will give you an in-game advantage over other players. So there are two flip sides to this. I don't think it's a big deal. It's actually, I like the idea. It's kind of interesting to have real money economy going on in the game, like similar to EVE. Still, I'm pretty sure some people will be turned off by the fact that that's basically it's pay to win. Not the terrible, like the worst version of pay to win, but it is to some degree pay to win, or to at least buy power. So there's that. And now let's talk about this business model at whole, because as I said, it's actually pretty important, because it's not cheap. Like, that's the $7 to $9 subscription per month. That's not cheap at all. So and the game basically requires you to play it. Yes, the Steam client gives you unlimited access, but as mentioned, limited to 10 CPU, which basically means you can't play the game properly. You can fool around with it a little bit, but if you just want to try the game, you can just go to the web client and register for free and try 3 days or 10 days with the Twitter promo or whatever. And that's a better way to just figure out if the game is for you. So, I think that a subscription model for this game makes sense. I understand why it is there, let's put it that way, because the game actually, or the developers have to actually run your code on their server, which can become quite expensive. Like, they need pretty good servers to keep the game running if there are a lot of players. So having some sort of subscription model in here makes sense. Still, it's pretty unfortunate that it is this expensive. I'm not here to judge. I don't know if the price is proper, like how much it would cost to run those servers. I don't know that. So the price might be completely right, but it's still a lot for a game like this. So that's pretty unfortunate. And it will be interesting to see what happens when those custom servers show up. Will other people create servers which have no or way lower subscription fees than the main server? Maybe. You will also be able to customize those servers, by the way, with specific routes and stuff like that. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think this, like, okay, let's sum up the subscription model first. So as I said, I think I understand why there's a subscription model, but it's still a little sad, because I think it will turn off a lot of people and prevent a lot of people from playing the game, because they're not willing to spend $7 to $9 a month on a game like this. Or on a game in general, like on a subscription model. Like, I usually don't subscribe to games. I will probably buy at least 1 month of this after my free Twitter promo days run out, but I'm not sure if I will keep that subscription up. But we will see. Anyway, a lot of people will be turned off by this, which is sad, but I understand why it is there. Okay, let's talk about the web client, Steam client thing again. As mentioned earlier, buying the Steam client right now is actually, like, there are not a lot of good reasons for it. One reason might be you want to support the developers, which is a valid reason. But if you're just looking at value for money, the Steam client is not great right now. It gives you the local storage, yes. But besides that, it gives you 1 month of subscription for the price of 2, basically. And besides that, it's the same features, because the custom servers are not in there yet. So the only reason besides supporting the developers I see buying the Steam client right now is, either if you think that programming in a third-party IDE is like really, really important for you and well worth the $7 to $8 depending on how you do the math, or if you're like in this very special mindset, you want to purchase or you want to either purchase a subscription later anyway, or will just play on custom servers. However, that's risky because we don't know how custom servers will turn out yet. How do I explain this? I had this set up in my mind, but it's kind of hard to put it in words. So if you're want to play the game now for a month and then wait for the custom servers to come in and play on custom servers, then it's kind of like, then it makes sense to buy the Steam client now, because then you can play for a month now, and then later when the custom servers come in, you can play on those. However, keep in mind that this is basically the same as pre-purchasing. That's the word, right? Pre-purchasing the game, because you're paying for a feature which is not there yet. The custom servers, are not there yet. So we don't know how they will turn out. Will they be good? Will there be issues with it? Will it be easy to set them up? Hard to tell right now, because they're not implemented yet. So yeah, I think it's like, as I mentioned earlier, if you're not like really want to support the development, or are in this very, very specific case where you want to play the game for a month right now and then switch to custom servers, and you're willing to take the risk that custom servers might be shit or never come or whatever, then it's worth to buy the Steam client. Besides that, I think you're way better off with the web client right now, except for local scripts, obviously. But so yeah, I think that's everything I want to say. That was a lot of minutes spent on business model, especially because I usually don't talk about gaming prices in my videos, because I think prices are very, very very subjective topic, and everyone has very different reasoning behind buying games. So how much money will you spend on a game, and on what kind of games and stuff like that, and what expectations do you have? And so I usually don't talk about that, especially because prices usually change as well, thanks to deals and stuff like that. But in a game like this, where the business model is so integral to the game mechanics, basically, because of the subscription model, I think it's important to talk about it. So that's my, not only 2 cents, I guess. That was a lot of words talking about the business model. Anyway, let's sum this up, shall we? I really, really like the core mechanics. I think it's a brilliant idea to have a game like this. I have a lot of fun coding for it right now, even though I have to say, learning JavaScript is a pain in the ass. I hate this language right now. It's terrible. But that might just be me. I don't like scripting languages in general. So there's that. And JavaScript seems to be, worse than others potentially. But the core mechanics are really cool. I like the idea. I have fun writing scripts for it. I like the fact that if you spend time, you can spend a lot of time on the game, but every hour you spend on improving your scripts is time you don't which will benefit you for the rest of the game as long as you play, because the scripts will continue running and do stuff. And if you improve them, if you spend time on improving them, they will be more efficient forever. Well, until you touch them the next time, obviously. But still, I like this because it just makes every time you improve a script, it feels really like you accomplished something, which will benefit you for a long time, which is cool. And my scripts are screwing up right now. Why are all there is down here where the energy source is empty, and nobody's going for this one? Even this one is going. Oh no, he's going for the extension. He's actually harvesting this one. Not sure what's going on there. I think the upgraders are always going for this energy source, but anyway. So yeah, I like it. I think the business model is a little unfortunate. I understand why it's there, but I still think it will turn off a lot of players. So that's a shame. How would I improve it? Well, first of all, I would include more subscription, like 2 subscription month at least in the Steam client, to be honest. And I would think about like if it were possible to reduce the subscription cost, or maybe get rid of it completely somehow. Without adding microtransaction, maybe that would be great. But yeah, if you get rid of the subscription model, however, you get rid of game tokens as well, which I don't know. It's not perfect, so I guess the subscription model will stay. But well, that's how it is. Anyway, this game is called Screeps. If you're interested in it, I will put a link to the Steam version and the web version in the description below, as always. And I really think you should give it a try at least try to get like a 3 days with the Twitter promo or something and check it out. It's kind of fun if you're into programming at all. If you don't, you probably closed the video like half an hour ago. Longer actually if I look at the timer, the recording timer. So as I said, I recommend checking it out. As it's called Screeps. I am TH Pine. Thanks a lot for watching. If you like this video, consider pressing the like button. If you disliked it, press the dislike button right next to it. Thanks a lot for watching. Have fun and see you next time.